Shabbat Shalom, brethren and sisterin. I don't know what that word is, but what's up, brothers and sisters? We are in Genesis 16, Bereshit 16. We talked last week about stuff. Melchizedek and Abram and stuff. Abrams' vision and covenants and all kinds of stuff. You can go back and watch the Genesis 14-15 video. So here we are. Now I understand that the audio wasn't the best on that, so I'll do my best to speak up. Guys, I'm working with an iPhone that's propped up on a stepladder right now. Here, I'll show you. So, do the best you can with what you got where you're at. Roger that. I am. Speaking of. I don't like the slurping. Yeah. Sorry. Alright. Let's get in here. We're in the scriptures. Blah, 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 blah. Translations, words of God, blah, blah, blah. Go back channel. Watch our other videos on discussion about translation. So, 16. And Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no child. And she had a Mitzrian female servant whose name was Hagar. So she had an Egyptian servant. Funny how the tides turn here shortly, aren't they? So she had an Egyptian lady working for her. Sarai did. And Sarai said to Abram, "See, Yahweh has kept me from bearing children. Please go into my female servant, Bow Chicka Wow Wow. Go get busy with Hagar. And it might be that I am built up by her." And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. Okay, so remember back here in Genesis 15, Yahweh, or the word of Yahweh, which we talked about, that's Yeshua, right? Well, how do you know that? John tells us, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word is God. Word was God, the Word is God. Okay, the Word made flesh, Yeshua. You mean Jesus? Yeah, except there's no J in Hebrew, so it was Yeshua, or Yahusha, or Yahushua, or Joshua, basically. We talked about all that last week. You can go watch that. So Yeshua comes to Abram in a vision and says, "Yo, dude, I'm going to build some nations out of you." And Abram's like, "That's cool. Guess what, man? I'm old and I don't have any kids. Just exactly how are you going to build nations out of me?" All right, so fast forward over here to Genesis 16. Sarai's like, "Hey, I got an idea. Why don't you go sleep with my lady servant? Maybe she'll give you some kids." And Abram's like, "Okay. Go team. Hashtag go team. Sounds good." Could you imagine? How do you... Men, if your wife came up to you and was like, "Hey, you see that PYT, that pretty young thing over there? Why don't you go get you some of that?" How do you not think that's a trap? I'm just saying, how do you... "Oh, okay, no problem. That's on. Thanks, babe. You're the best." How do you not see this as a trap? Let alone to build a nation of Yah's chosen people out of. You think there'll be a little bit of jealousy here? 3. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her female servant, the Mitzrian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. Canaan, as it says in the Hebrew, something like that. Can y'all see that? Canaan. And he went into Hagar, bow, 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 bow. And she conceived. He hit the mark. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said to Abram, My wrong be upon you. I gave my female servant into your bosom, and when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Let Yahweh judge between you and me. There's one chicken coming over here. One. It's like, oh, we're YouTubing? Cool. Can I get in on this? I should probably start my chickens a YouTube channel. That's a thought. Backyardchickens.com. All right, so Sarai says to Abram, hey man, why don't you go tap Hagar? And Abram's like, okay, that sounds good. And so he does. And Hagar gets pregnant. And then Hagar's pregnant, Sarai's not. And Hagar despises Sarai. Probably a little bit of that, you thought you were so hot, Miss Lady? Now who's pregnant with Abram's baby? Right? Probably some of that going on. Or the 4,000-year-old ancient Hebrew version of that. So, okay. So and Sarai says, we'll let Yahweh, we'll let God be the judge of this. So 6, and Abram said to Sarai, see, your female servant is in your hand. Do to her what is good in your eyes. So Abram's like, whoa. This was your idea. You do what you think you need to do. Okay? He's like, all I did was bang the chick, honey. You told me to bang the chick. I banged the chick. Now she got pregnant. You don't get to be mad with me. We'll let God decide. She's your problem. You deal with it. Okay. Do to her what is good in your eyes. We're in the middle of 16:6. And Sarai treated her harshly, you think. And she fled from her presence. And the messenger of Yahweh, that's an angel. What are angels? They're messengers. Capital M, messenger. And the messenger of Yahweh found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's female servant, where have you come from and where you go? Where do you come from, Cotton Eye Joe? That's not what he said. He said, Sarai, female servant, where have you come from and where are you going? As if he didn't know. All right, so this is an exchange of bona fides right here. He's like, let's see if you're capable of telling the truth. Because I bet you angels get real good briefs before they leave heaven and come to earth. You know what I mean? They probably don't even have to talk about it. It's just telepathically communicated. Go here, help this person do this, accomplish this goal. Okay. She said, I am fleeing from the presence of Sarai, my mistress. And the messenger of Yahweh said to her, return to your mistress and humble yourself under her hand. Go act right, girl. You were prancing around, being all that, go back. And you probably engendered all kinds of hatred and jealousy and disdain. No wonder Sarai was treating you harshly. Go back and act right. So, and I think it's important here to realize it says a messenger of Yahweh, right? An angel. Without getting all metaphysical on you, and definitely without getting into the Touched by an Angel TV series of yesteryear, how many times in your life, I know for me, it's been a few, not more than I can count on one hand, but definitely a few times, 3 or 4 times, I have run into somebody, the right person at the right place at the right time, that I had no reason, no business, to talk to that person. Yet they had exactly what I needed right then. They had it. And they go on their merry way. You never see them again. But you're restored. You're lifted up, right? You've had the breath of life breathed into you again. And you're good. And you just kind of like, thank you, Father. Thank you. I needed that, right? I know on 2 occasions, without trying to be, people have told me that I was that for them. I'm not an angel. I'm the farthest thing from an angel, right? If we had like a meter angel demon, I'm probably just over the 50% mark back this way towards likely not to burn in the pits of hell. Okay? But I've been told by people twice now, which is even more humbling. Dude, you had what I needed right when I had it. So, a messenger of Yahweh, right, which would be transcribed as an angel. But listen to the words, a messenger of Yahweh. Go forth to all nations and preach my word, carry my message, right? The Great Commission, make disciples of all nations. Wouldn't that make you a messenger of Yahweh? Isn't there an implication here in this phraseology, a messenger of Yahweh, that that's what we are supposed to be? That we are supposed to carry a kind word, truth and love to his people? You are, I am, we all are. If we are truly to be sanctified and set apart, this is a big part of our job. To be a messenger of Yahweh, as my brother Gordy calls it, an unintentional shepherd. Can you be an unintentional shepherd and be aware of the fact that you're shepherding even though you don't want to be? I ask you, my kind brother. Can you carry that responsibility without wanting to carry it, but knowing that you're supposed to carry it? It's like rucking. This is going to be kind of fun sometimes and kind of uncomfortable other times, but yet this is my burden to carry. Roger? Roger. Oh, that's right. I mean, do you understand? Because we have a Roger. Hi, Roger. Okay. So, a messenger of Yahweh. Yeah, we camped on that for a little bit, but it's worth camping on. Consider that, because that's in our job descriptions, y'all. All right. Return to your mistress and humble yourself under her hand. Quit acting Jerry Springer, girl. Stop it. Go humble yourself. And the messenger of Yahweh said to her, I am going to increase your seed greatly, too numerous to be counted. And the messenger of Yahweh said to her, see, you are conceiving and bearing a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because Yahweh has heard your affliction. And he is to be a wild man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and dwell over against all his brothers. And she called the name of Yahweh, who spoke to her, you are the El, the God, who sees, for she said, even here have I seen after him who sees me. That is why the well was called Be'er Lahai Roi. See, it is between Kadesh and Bered. So she acknowledges that God sees her, right? That the Father was understanding of her situation, right? And they named a well after this to commemorate this. In the Hebraic oral tradition, it's a teaching point. See this well? This is the well where Sarai was at when a messenger of the Father came to her. A messenger of Yahweh was here and said, hey girl, quit acting like a crazy hoe. Go back and get under the authority of Sarai. She is the wife of Abram. She is the one who orchestrated all of this so that a nation could be built out of you, which the messenger says will happen. And we're going to keep reading. All right. So Ishmael is born out of Hagar. Hagar sounded like kind of a crazy hoe. Yeah, I said hoe 3 times now while reading the Bible. Brown bear don't care. All right, moving on. Also important to point out in 16:14, where it says, it is between Kadesh and Bered. Understand that Kadesh there is Qadesh. Okay, Kadesh. It is not Kodesh. It may be a transliteration of the word Kodesh, but Kodesh means sanctified, which means set apart. So as Pastor Joe, he needs to make a t-shirt that says this, Kodeshified, right? We are to be Kodeshified. We are to be sanctified, set apart, holy. Literally the word holy means to be set apart from. That's why we have these zitziot, tied on the four corners of our garments, right? That's why we keep the beard. That's why we act weird and speak truth in love, so that people look at us and go, I have no idea. I have no idea what's up with these people, other than I want some of that. I'm intrigued. How do I get some of that? As Paul says, the peace that surpasses all understanding. How, when my life is falling apart all around me, how do I get some of that, what that guy has? The structure of his life is on fire, and he's calmly sitting there praising the Lord. I want some of that, okay? That is Kadesh. Kilo, Oscar, Delta, Echo, Sierra, Hilo, Kadesh. Not Kadesh. Although that's quite possibly a transliteration of Kadesh. All right. Moving on, 1615. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Yishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Yishmael to Abram. Okay. So, no spring chicken. And also remember, during this time, the lifespan of man is being shrunken. Okay, so we go back to Methuselah, is 969 years old, right? So 86 years is nothing. In fact, when we were working through the begats, I think in Genesis 10, it was like they didn't start having babies till they were in their 120s. Yeah, Genesis 10, the genealogy, right? And yada, yada, yada. And then into, yep, Genesis 10. We got the begats there. Okay. But they were not 86 years old. 86 years old was like 16 or 17 years old, right? At that time, because people were living into their 800s and 900s. Well, now, the flood, right? Here's a little backstory for you. As in the end times, it shall be in the days of Noah. Okay. What were the days of Noah? The Nephilim, the Watchers and the Nephilim, the fallen angels, the Watchers came to Earth, right? You want to read a cool book? Look up Uriel's Machine. Uriel. Uriel's Machine talks about Stonehenge, and Stonehenge being a calculator, and it calculates the position of the sun, moon, and stars, which allows you to keep a lunar calendar, which is what the Hebrews use, is a lunar calendar, and that's important for agrarian cultures, but it's also important for keeping feasts. Uriel was allegedly, according to Enoch, one of the 7 archangels, 5 of which fell to earth, which left Michael and Gabriel up in heaven. So this is extra biblical. This is not in the Bible, okay? So just take this, put it over here, and understand now we're talking about extra biblical stuff. But Uriel being one of the 7 archangels, allegedly, according to Enoch. Enoch was a cool dude, right? These 5 archangels that fell, yeah, 1/3 of the angels fell, but 5 of 7 archangels fell, okay? And so, for example, Azazel was, he taught women how to beautify themselves. He taught men how to make war and implements of war and to wage war. Right, and then there's mathematics. Uriel was mathematics, Azazel was war, and then there was agriculture, animal husbandry, so forth and so on. All about the same time, we see anthropologically that the acceleration of mankind, all about this time, that all of a sudden we go from rocks to metallurgy. We go from, little tiny tribes and caves to communities, and animal husbandry appears. And okay, so this story of Enoch supports this work that's being done in the field of people digging up bones and going, hey, this bone had a bronze arrowhead in it. How did that happen? Okay, so huge tangent here. That's okay, because we're in between books. We're about to start 17. But in the last days, so it shall be as the days of Noah. What was going on with Noah? These angels come to earth, and it specifically says here in Genesis that they're like, look at all these human hotties. we need to bow chicka wow wow. Let's go team. Right? That's why they left heaven in the first place. They were looking down going, got to get me some of that. Right? So not only were they copulating with the daughters of men, which is where you get the heroes of old, right? The Greek, these guys, right? But also, they're angels, okay? So they're also copulating with animals, which is where you get the minotaur and the satyr, right? The half bull, half dude, the half horse, half dude, so forth and so on, right? The reason that the Father destroys all life that stood on earth, right? That's literally what it says in this book, is all life that was standing on the earth, other than the remnant that he preserves through the line of Noah, which again, the rainbow is indicative of the Noahic covenant. So when you see a rainbow, remember that God made a promise with you to preserve a remnant. He's reminding you, I will always preserve a remnant, okay? But that remnant was of clean blood. Noah was the last person on earth. Noah and his wife and Shem and Jap, or Ham, Shem, and Jap was the last of the people on earth that had not been interbred with the Nephilim. Aha! Remember, all this is extra biblical. This is not what the Bible itself says, but this is what books about the Bible say. So, remember that all that happened, okay? And that happened, when that happened, after that happened, the human lifespan was no longer hundreds of years, okay? The Father says, from now on, your days will number no more than 120 years. So I said all that so I could say this. Abram's 86 years old now. 86 is not what it used to be, biblically. 86 is 86. So he's 86 when Ishmael is born, okay? He's even older than that as we move forward. Okay, so 17. And it came to be when Abram was 99 years old that Yahweh appeared to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai, walk before me and be perfect. And I give my covenant between me and you, and shall greatly increase you. Now remember, Abram already had, and this is a really good point too, Abram already had a vision of the word of Yahweh. Who's the word of Yahweh, right? Yeshua. So Yeshua already came to him. Okay, so we can back into a number right here. We'll probably be wrong, but we can back into a number. So Yeshua comes to him. Abram, gets a 3-year-old red heifer and some birds, and he splits them, right? Because in Hebraic tradition, whenever a covenant is made, there is bloodshed. So he cuts these animals open, lays them out, and then he passes out. And then Yeshua comes to him and says, I'm going to build some nations out of you. And Abram's like, whatever, dude, I don't even have any kids. Okay. And then it says over here, Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and yada, yada, yada. Sarai says, hey, why don't you go bang Hagar, and you can get some kids out of this deal. And Abram's like, okay, that sounds good. I'll just go bang Hagar, and nothing bad will happen, right? And it says, so after Hagar dwelt with them for, what does it say, 10 years? Okay, so we got 10 years here. He was 76. 76 at least, possibly younger, 76 years old when the Hagar and Abram thing happened. And then he's 86 when Ishmael is born. And then he's 99 when El Shaddai, when Yahweh appeared to Abram. Okay, so from 76 to 99, 23 years have gone by. 23 years have gone by since Yahweh, Yeshua, appears to Abram in a vision and says, I will build a great nation out of you, all nations. You'll be the father of all nations. And Abram's like, fact and non-verba, dude. Deeds, not words. Prove it. 23 years go by. And then Yahweh appears and says, it's time. If you can't pick a lesson for your life out of that, you are not living, my brothers and sisters. It's not our time. It's not our will. It's his time, his will. When he says go, we go. In the meanwhile, we do the best we can with what we've got, where we're at, to fulfill his will for our lives. Here to be ready that when he says go, we go. But 23 years go by, and not of crazy old biblical timeline, of our lifeline. 23 years of our life has gone by from the time the Father, through Yeshua, appears to Abram to the time that he then appears. El Shaddai, walk before me and be perfect, and I give my covenant between me and you and shall greatly increase you. Okay. And Abram fell on his face. This is 17:3. And Elohim spoke with him, saying, as for me, look, my covenant is with you, and you shall become a father of many nations. And no longer is your name called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, because I shall make you a father of many nations. And I shall make you exceedingly fruitful, and make nations of you, and sovereigns shall come from you, kings. And I shall establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you and their generations for an everlasting covenant to be Elohim to you and your seed after you. And I shall give to you and your seed after you the land of your sojournings, all the land you've traveled, and all the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession, and I shall be their Elohim. And Elohim said to Abraham, as for you, remember who's Elohim? Elohim is plural. Okay. Which is interesting because he's walking with Yahweh, yet he's talking with Elohim. As for you, guard my covenant, you and your seed after you throughout their generations. As for you, guard my covenant, you and your seed throughout their generations. Do we still have generations? Yep. 17:9. And Elohim said to Abraham, as for you, guard my covenant. You and your seed after you. Not just Abraham. Remember that whole tree of life thing us Gentiles, us heathens are grafted into? What are the roots of that tree of life? No roots, no fruit, brother. The Adamic covenant, the Noahic covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, the Mosaic covenant, on down the line. We, if we are to be grafted into the tree of life, are to guard this covenant, not just have it written on our hearts, which we are supposed to do. We are supposed to have the law, the Torah, written on our hearts. But we are to guard this. I mean, like, guard it and keep it and know it here and know it here and do it here and speak it here. We are to guard this. Why? Go to the end of the book. Read Revelation 12:17. The remnant of the church, the one that does not bow the knee to that dirty beast, the one that is not wiped away in this temporal physical plane. Those of us that are left have a testimony of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, and keep the commandments. Where do we keep them? We keep them here. We have them written on our heart here. We know them here. We do them here. And we speak them here. This is important. This is one half of the contract between Abraham, and Yahweh, Elohim. The three, the Trinity, the triune Godhead, all of it, the Alpha and Omega. What does Yeshua say at the beginning of the revelation of Jesus Christ as told by John. I am the Alpha and the Omega. I'm it. I'm all of it. So as we talked about, we get different facets of the triune Godhead, of the Elohim, the plurality of God. But we are told unequivocally, as for you, guard my covenant, you and your seed after you throughout their generations. Where does seed come from? Seed comes from fruit. Where does fruit come from? Fruit comes from the plant or the vine. John 15:5, I'm the vine and you are the branches. Okay. You don't get any of that without roots. Which is why we are embedded in the Hebrew roots movement. Where did all this come from? You cannot figure out where you're going if you don't know where you are and where you're coming from. You need 3 points to triangulate. So you need to know yourself, right? Yeshua said that. Roger that. You need to know who you are. I need to know who I am. We need to know where we've come from so that we can figure out where we're going. Okay. I think I've stomped all over that enough times that you guys get it. All right, good. This is my covenant which you guard between me and you. This is 10. And your seed after you. Every male child among you is to be circumcised, and you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall become a sign of the covenant between me and you. And a son of 8 days is circumcised by you, every male child in your generations, he who is born in your house or bought with silver from any foreigner who is not of your seed. He who is born in your house and he who is bought with your silver has to be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And an uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, his life shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. We're going to read the rest of 17, and we will come back with some commentary at the end of this. Okay. And Elohim said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, do not call her name Sarai, for Sarah is her name. And I shall bless her, and also give you a son by her. And I shall bless her, and she shall become nations. Sovereigns of people are to be from her. Kings of nations are to be from her. And Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said in his heart, is a child born to a man who is 100 years old, or is Sarah, who is 90 years old, to bear a child? Can you imagine? Have you ever wanted to smack a 100-year-old man? But you see the point he's making. It would be like if we walked up the hill that way and went over to visit Grandma for breakfast, and she said, Homie, by the way, I just want to let you know, I'm pregnant. You're what, Grandma? I think you're drunk. I don't think you're pregnant. I think you're drunk. Or you took some medication you shouldn't have taken or something. Okay, so Abram literally falls on his face, starts busting a gut. He's like, oh yeah, you got a 100-year-old dude and a 90-year-old woman. Let's see what you can do. Okay. And Abraham, this is 17, 18. And Abraham said to Elohim, oh, let Ishmael live before you. And Elohim said, no, Sarah your wife is truly bearing a son to you, and you shall call his name Yitzhak. Isaac. It's spelled Yitzhak. But I could see how you get Isaac out of that. Isaac. And I shall establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. See, I shall bless him, and shall make him fruitful, and greatly increase him. He is to bring forth 12 princes, and I shall make him a great nation. But my covenant I establish with Isaac, whom Sarah is to bear to you at this appointed time next year. And when he had ended speaking with him, Elohim went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, And all those born in his house, and all those bought with his silver, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that same day, as Elohim had told him. Now remember, it's not a small group of people we're talking about. Remember when Abram goes to get Lot, the military action in the Siddim Valley. He had 318 guys of his own house, right? So we can surmise he's got 300 to 350 guys, possibly more now, because time has gone by. We'll say, several hundred guys. We'll come back to this. Okay. 24. And Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Traditions of man, anybody? 13 years old, a Jewish boy becomes a Jewish man. And all of the men of his house, born in the house or bought with silver from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. And that is the end of Bereshit 17, Genesis 17. All right. Everybody was doing great till we started talking about cutting foreskins, I'm sure. So I've done a good bit of research on this because of all the things to have as a covenant. I'm going to try not and be crude here, but God appears to you. The triune Godhead walks and talks with you. He says, I will build nations out of you, old man. Literally, the stars of the sky and the dust of the earth will be what is used to compare how many people I will build out of you. Interestingly enough, how many men left Mitzrayim with Moshe, with Moses? Okay, how many Hebrew men walked out of Egypt? Ask you another question. How many, on a clear night, how many stars can the naked eye observe? Is it interesting? Is it just a coincidence? Maybe it is. Is it just a coincidence that it's the same number? That when Yahweh says to Abraham, I'll build nations out of you. Your people will be in captivity 400 years. Remember, Yah tells Abram this. He tells him, it's like, look, your people are going to be in bondage. But when they leave 400 years later, 600,000 men leave with Moshe. Somewhere around 3 to 5 million people total leave. Okay? 600,000 is the number of observable stars, give or take, that you can see with your naked eye on a clear night. Coinky dink? Nah, I don't think so. But in order for Abraham to be blessed by this covenant at the ripe old age of 99 years old, he's got to cut off part of his penis. Ouch. Now, the first thing I would note is there's a lot of messed up traditions of man in the Judaic faiths now relating to this. If a rabbi ever attempted to put his mouth on my 8-year-old son's recently circumcised penis, I would probably kill that person. I think that's gross. I don't care if that's a tradition or not. That's a tradition of man. Because it doesn't say anywhere in this book, hey, do this. That's gross. One of the many reasons why I don't care about traditions of man. I just really don't. If Yah says do it, we do it. Elohim says jump, we say yes sir, how high? And he says just jump as high as you can until I tell you to stop. And we say yes sir. Alright. I got cadences running through my head now. Red-tailed hawk. Interesting. So, Traditions of man, traditions of God. There's a lot of reasons why somebody would be circumcised. The cleanliness aspect of it, especially if you're a nomadic tribe, I can definitely understand why somebody would want to be circumcised, why it would be wise for somebody to be circumcised. There's evidence that points to increased rates of fertility comparing circumcision versus non-circumcised. Peni, what's the plural? Penises? We're all adults here, right? So, and some people say, well, it decreases sensitivity. No, it increases sensitivity. It's better for the woman. No, it's not better for the woman. I don't know. Last I checked, it wasn't my job to understand the differences between circumcised and uncircumcised penises. What I can tell you is what this Bible says. What this Bible says is that is a sign of the covenant between Abraham and Elohim. So I would encourage you that if you're not and you want to keep Torah, that might be something you think about. And I'm going to let that be a personal decision for you, brother, because we are told to keep the commandments of Yah. We are also covered by the grace of the blood of the Lamb. So follow as he leads you in that. That's what I will tell you. Beyond that, we see the faithfulness of the Father. 23 plus years. We see the faithfulness. Yah did not forget his covenant with Abram. I bet you there were plenty of days that Abram forgot his covenant with Yah. Yet and still, the plurality walked with Abram. That's important. Don't act like a hoe is another takeaway from this. Okay? Obviously, God's going to do what God's going to do. Hagar got Ishmael, right? Ishmael still got a nation built out of him. But you can almost see the folly here of humans in their brokenness trying to force the hand of Yah to enact his will. Because in the interim, Sarai says, why don't you just go bang Hagar? Build nations that way. Oh, okay, that sounds good. Yeah. And it worked out because that's what the Father does. He works it out. But it was obviously uncomfortable there for a while. And it's not that the Father can't use those situations, because he often does. He's very good at that, turning a bad situation into a good situation. But what would it have looked like? The story could have been kind of different if Abram and Sarai had been patient for 23 years. And who knows? Maybe Abram was just horny. Maybe Abram just needed to tap something. Don't know. Wasn't there. I don't know. But the Father used it to make his will manifest, right? He used Hagar, he used Sarai, he used Abram, he used Ishmael, right? Okay. There's a lot of lessons in here, in this part, especially as far as being faithful, the Father remembering, right? Doing what we're told to do, not forgetting our covenants, for us especially, to keep this covenant, to have these words, to guard this covenant, to guard these words, to have them written on our heart, as Moshe tells us, right? They should be on our lips. James tells us, be not just hearers of the word, but doers of the word also, right? So for us, it's much more than, yeah, I read my Bible today, or I've read my Bible this week, or yeah, I'm going to read it next week. Okay. We are to be the living word to the best of our broken ability. Okay. We are to be Christ-like Christ, as much as we can. It's not easy. It's hard. But it becomes easier. It's a muscle. The more you use it, the more you use these things, the easier they get to use, the more reflexive it becomes. If you're training with somebody and you just keep getting hit in the face and your guard sucks, right? It sucks, and you see it coming, you know it's coming, but your guard sucks, and you can't, right? But the more you train that, the easier it is to step, push, right? You get used to that. You see it coming, and you go, oh, I know what this is. I've practiced this. I've lived this. I've worked through this. I didn't just hear my sensei, my rabbi talk about it. I was also a doer of it, and I've practiced this to where I've got this now, right? I can come here, I can do this now because I practiced it, right? And for a while, you're gonna get punched in the face because your guard sucks, because you're hearing the word and you're getting practiced in doing the word. But the more you do the word, the more reflexive it becomes until you're so good at doing that particular part of the word. When the student is ready, the master will appear. When the master is ready, the student will appear. Okay? You get so good at that, whatever that is, that you can teach people now. That. And in the teaching of that, you get better at other things. Maybe you've mastered this. Okay, then you get from here to this. And then the next thing that you're working on is maybe it's this elbow. Or maybe it's this. Or whatever. Maybe it's step back and it's a big knee. Whatever it is, it's something, right? It's the next step and the next step and the next step. And so we see that in our progression of covenants with the Adamic covenant, the Noahic covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, the Mosaic covenant, Moses, right? So we have to practice this stuff. We have to have it written on our heart, but not just written on our heart. It has to be the top of our mind, right? The Shema, right? Keep this as frontlets upon thine eyes. That's why it's written over the top of my hat. Because I robbed that from Pastor Joe. What a great place to have it. Everything I look at, it's there. It's right there above my eyes. And it reminds me, right? So we have to remember our half of the covenant. And we have to remember the Father hasn't forgotten his half of the covenant. And we need to be reminded that when all this comes to pass, at the end of the book, when this is all said and done, there are two qualifiers. Those that have a testimony of Yah and those that keep the commandments. So, shalom and blessings. Peace.